Okay, Dr. Scott Langford is here to welcome you to the wonderful world of Mary Poppins. I mentioned in my intro video for this module, I was 7 years old when the Disney hit film came out in 1964. And so I want to tell you what happened when I found myself teaching this book for the very first time, reading this book for the very first time as part of my children's literature course in London, England, with Foothill College in 2014, where I was lucky enough to be teaching with Foothill students, by the way, and De Anza students. Our campus was the University College London, right in the middle of Bloomsbury, the most famous literary region of London. And time again, as I was reading these books that I'd only experienced in Disney versions, I was amazed and sometimes appalled and sometimes astounded, always astounded, by the content of these books, the wild content. And some of this turned out to have a great deal to do with where I was teaching. That's one reason I'm mentioning London. There were these wild spiritual quests, that there's really not anything else to call them, going on in Britain at the time. There was something called Theosophy, a newly invented religion, sort of the way Americans invented Scientology. The British invented this thing called Theosophy, which mixed Hindu and Buddhist and other quote-unquote Eastern religions into this kind of fusion melange that all British intellectuals, virtually all, were fascinated by. And the author of Mary Poppins turns out to have been a real practitioner of this Theosophy religion, and it works its way into what becomes in Disney the dancing penguin scene, but which in the book itself is a weird and wild kind of semi-hallucinogenic, don't know about the drug thing again, I don't think so, but you don't know. I mean, it is profound and strange. So that's where all the religion stuff comes from, the mythological animals. But of course, we're here to talk about what happens to Mary Poppins in American culture, and I already ranted away in the intro video for this module about the way that Disney adds in a whole section on women getting the vote, which doesn't exist in the novel at all. But the other crazy thing was that the same year a movie comes out from Hollywood about the making of Mary Poppins. It's called Saving Mr. Banks. I gave you a link to the trailer. It stars Tom Hanks. It's actually a wonderful movie, and I was astounded by the movie. And again, you know, we could be reading Mary Poppins in the previous module about biographical criticism, because the story of her life as this little girl who loses her mother and is raised by her alcoholic father in the outback of Australia. She's actually not British. And then a nanny comes to rescue her from the chaos of her father's pathetic alcoholic but still somewhat magical method of parenting. And I can so identify with this as the child of an alcoholic myself. Adult child of an alcoholic. Any ACOAs out there? But the movie gets so much else wrong. And I gave you a link to an article about that, and of course a very airbrushed version of Disney, and a kind of airbrushed version of our author. So that's a second thing that we can have a look at, since it's been very much part of American culture. And then just to kind of end up, I want to point out that when I was Googling away, it turns out Disney's coming out with Mary Poppins Returns this next year, 2018. So the shouting ain't over yet. So what are we looking at? It's Feminist Criticism Week. Your discussion prompt: how do you see gender roles in the novel in particular playing out? How do you see them challenged? How do you see them not challenged? Very interesting to hear from millennial readers how the book plays out for you, and whether it seems antique and creaky and awful and cringy with these kind of Victorian, Edwardian gender roles that you can't recognize, or do you do you find some of what made the book so radical for readers and even for Walt Disney in the 1960s? Can't wait to hear, as always. Have a good read. Watch the Walt Disney movie. It's one of the best he ever made. And do read the novel to see how very different it is. If all you do is watch the Disney movie, I'm going to know, because the novel is too different from the movie. Spoiler alert. Don't spoil your discussion by only watching the movie. You've got to do the reading. You've got to do the reading. You've got to do the reading.